Hello, and welcome to this episode of Spotlight on the Divorce Expert. And a lot of times on this series, we interview attorneys, accountants, mediators, divorce coaches. And I think it's really important to remember that there's so much more about divorce than the practical side or the parts that you have to get through. And one of the parts of the divorce process and post-divorce life is bringing yourself back to your authentic person and being able to reinfuse joy and happiness and creativity into your life. Because if you've been through a divorce, you know, divorce just sucks that right out of you. That's not where your energy goes. But we may be doing ourselves a disservice by not focusing on that at all points in time in our life, including through the challenges of divorce. So I have an expert guest today, Jenny Elinora. She is a creative empowerment coach. She's an award-winning musician, and she really focuses on helping women 50 and older, I fall into that category, to help rediscover their voices, rediscover their creativity, and even rediscover what play means in life as an adult and the benefit that brings to people. Jenny uses a holistic approach, which includes sound healing, somatic practices, and her creative coaching to really help people find out or rediscover, I'm going to say, who they are and and be authentically happy and joyful in their life. So, Jenny, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Marty.
And I know we've been on the podcast together, so I'm going to make sure the link is in there for the podcast. But what I'd like to talk about today, and I think what we're going to talk about today, is really how to create a sense of creativity and play and that capacity for enjoying the world around you, even when things maybe are not going the way that you always hoped they did. Before we get into that, can you just tell us a little bit about why you believe this is so critical?
It's a matter of personal experience first and foremost. Is that, I guess you could say that the first half of my life, more than half of my life, was one of very little joy and very much depression and anxiety. And up until the time when I got a divorce and was in the middle of getting a divorce, and then through creativity and through having a creative champion who helped me to feel more confident about sharing my creative voice, uh, joy started to grow in my life to the point where now it's quite a factor.
Yeah.
It fuels me. I have lots of it, and I'm giving it now too. So.
And you mentioned a term there that I bet you nobody else has heard, and that's creative champion. What is a creative champion?
Yeah, so I think that I got it from Julia Cameron, who wrote The Artist's Way, although I can't specifically remember if that was a phrase she used. I know she uses the phrase creative monsters. And those are people and or situations that like stifle us creatively or put us down or, you know, make us believe, and we all have so many of them within our culture, make us believe that we are not valuable creatively. And phrases like, I'm not creative, come out of that, right?
Right.
And the fact is that we are all creative, and every single one of us needs at least a couple of people to be a creative champion for us and to support us in being the full creative beings that we are, whether we're choosing to express that through art, which is the classic example,
Sure.
or whether we're choosing to express it through whatever else we do. That could be caregiving. For me, I started most recently, it was starting a business. That was a very creative endeavor for me that is actually even more powerful creatively for me than even writing my own albums was. So, or being in bands.
Right.
So yeah. So yes, we all need that to open ourselves up. That is the road to being whole and being able to experience a full level of joy. So, yeah, before we're adults, we have taken in a lot of messages about creativity and play. Mostly being that they are after the things that we do after we are done with our work and our responsibilities. Um, there is some falseness to that either or. There is some non-humanity going
Yeah.
on within that either or situation. It's probably one of the bases for a lot of the inhumane things that go on in the world and in our societies. Um, so yeah, what our job is, I guess I could say, once we recognize that, is both for our sakes, for the sake of our children who are trying to tell us in various ways the same thing. Our job is to allow all the energies of work and responsibility and creativity and play to be part of each other, right? To just be who we are and what we do. Some moments are going to feel more joyful and more in the flow, no matter what we're doing, whether we're
Sure.
playing or working. Some moments are going to feel more stuck and a little bit challenging, or maybe a lot challenging, depending on what's happening in the moment. And joy is possible in every moment when we're looking for it and choosing it. So,
So let's talk about this because I really believe what you just said, that joy is possible when we choose it. Let's talk about a difficult situation like going through a divorce. We know that particularly women who go through divorce later in life have a higher risk of certain types of cancers, of heart attack and stroke, of cardiovascular disease, of digestive problems, sleep disturbances, depression. The list goes on and on. Alcohol and drug addiction problems. The list goes on and on and on. So why or how can we start to, in the midst of all of this stuff of a divorce, go, oh, I'd like to be joyful now. Like I can hear people already going, oh my gosh, I can't believe they're asking us to do this. What do you think about that? And how do you find these little sparks and things to do?
yeah, my prescription for that, I had a friend who is a former doctor describe it this way as she's like, oh, this is your prescription the other day, is micro moments of play where we find things. And I think in our podcast I recommended chat gpt is a you can just look up like what are things that I can do in 5 minutes or less that are playful that might spark my joy, right? And it'll come up with a list, with you can tweak it, you can ask for a list, you can ask for a list of 100 if you want to, and there's bound to be at least a few things on there that you will really enjoy. So then you build those moments into your day. You keep that list with you. Maybe you set an alarm 3 times a day minimum, to just randomly tell you, oh, it's time to do one of those things. It's time to, if you're in the shower, it's time to gargle with the water. That's one of my
Yeah,
that's one of my micro moments or micro doses, I call it, of play that I give myself.
I love
Um,
that. And yeah,
right.
so I have to tell you that you've just all of a sudden got me thinking. I saw this online and I bought this thing. It's called 30-second dance party. Have you ever heard of this? And
No, I love that though.
it's this little button. It's like one of those easy button things, and you just set it on your counter and you walk by and you whack it, and it gives you like 30 seconds of dance music. And so I just dance. My dogs think I'm insane, but it's fun.
Yep.
And that really made me think of that. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a client right now who we're just coming off of what we called our summer of play. We really had a program, where we intentionally played all summer, and she has started spontaneously just doing little dance at work behind her desk, just randomly whenever she's feeling that little down, energy drop throughout the day. She just gets up and does a little dance party, like just like you're describing.
you know and who cares, like, as adults we're so worried about what everybody else is going to think.
Yeah,
Kids just do it, they don't care.
right. We even worry, I think, at the level, or by the time it gets to a certain point, we even worry about what we ourselves think. Like when I first started, I guess, practicing this stuff, Now I'm just doing it. But when I first started practicing it, um, it I could be alone and feel very weird about it. I
Yeah.
can and feel embarrassed, right? That is something that we need to like hold for ourselves. That is something that's great to have a coach like me to help hold it, uh,
Right.
help hold it, and help give ourselves that permission. That is like and that faith that even if it feels weird at first, just like anything else, you keep doing it and it doesn't feel weird in the end. And that faith comes in about like how much benefit there is on the other side of that and how much relief, how much joy is on the other side of going ahead and allowing ourselves and giving ourselves permission to do things that feel weird.
Yeah, and but the thing is it's so fun. You know, like I say, that little dance button thing, just it makes me laugh every time I do it. And I'm I don't care. It's just me and the dogs in the house. It doesn't, well, the cats sometimes look, but it's just for fun. You can do, and I really loved your message that play and creativity is very individual. So it's not just the artist kind of stuff. It can be whatever you want to make it.
Yes. As far as play goes specifically, I got a lot of information about that, and you can check out Stuart Brown for on the National Institutes of Play. I think it's, you can Google National Institutes of Play. There's a lot of information there. There's a little quiz to how to find your own like play style. It's not a scientific quiz or anything like that, but it can help get you started on understanding, well, what ways do I like to play, which then opens the doors and leads to what ways can I be more creative in my life and how do I want to express myself creatively in my life, what fits with me the best and what ways can I stretch into.
Yeah. And so let's roll this forward, fast forward this. So you start tapping into a little bit of play and finding those micro dosages of play throughout the day when you're dealing with the stressful part of the divorce. Then for a lot of people post divorce, particularly I think for women, is a chance to come back to who you really are as a person, as opposed to being the wife, the mom, the business professional, the 101 roles you play. Now you have a chance, especially if your kids are grown up or perhaps you never had children. Now, as a single person, you have the chance to really get to know yourself. Talk about how the role of creativity and play can really help people discover who they truly, authentically are.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I can talk about that most deeply from my own experience. I didn't sing in public till I was 33. Then I was in a lot of other people's bands for a couple of decades, which was great. I was being creative, and one band in particular allowed me more, creative voice within that band than others. And then I also spearheaded a few projects also where my creative voice was pretty prominent. However, I did end up putting my own solo stuff out when I was 50, which was a couple of years ago. And that, the reason for that was some major healing needed to happen. Um, my mother died in 2019,
Oh, I'm
and
sorry.
she was one of my creative champions, and she was also someone who actively, consciously, long before it was popular in any way, it was like when I was a teenager back then, she was like trying to recognize the energies and stoke the energies of play within herself. I didn't like realize all this till much later myself. But yeah, when she died, it became actually an inspiration for healing, which came through and came out of me because those creative energies had already kind of been opened. It allowed me to flow into my solo albums, which are a pure expression of who I am, the most pure, like way more pure than you're ever going to hear me as I'm talking here.
Right,
uh,
right.
yeah, way more deep and direct to like the core of myself.
And I think for women, again, because you and I mostly work with women, that there's this sense of I'm maybe a little afraid of opening that door. Like, am I off base on that one, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, as we talked a little bit about in the podcast, like it can change relationships, it can change a lot of things once we are opening the door to who we really are. I there's a whole set of friends that I that I am not really friends with anymore since all this kind of stuff happened creatively for me. And so, and yet, I mean, I'm grateful for it. Again, this is another borrow my faith thing. Yes, it can feel scary, and if there's something drawing you from your belly to do it, or your heart, go for it anyway. It will, on the other side of it, there's a lot of relief and a lot of expansion and a lot of beauty. Um, and another thing that I was going to say about that is, ooh, uh, I don't remember.
That's okay. I do that all the
Yeah.
time. Um,
Yep.
if if again, we talked about some of the ideas and ways that people see creativity traditionally, but you really encourage your clients to go beyond that narrow painting, writing, even music, right? Like you're encouraging people to think about creativity. And so if you're sitting there and you're thinking, well, I'd like to get back to something I used to do, but I don't really know if I want to go back to, whatever it was. How do you know, or how do you discover, or how do you find out what your creative muse is?
Yeah, that does remind me actually of what I was gonna say.
There you go.
So, so yeah, I had a client who came to me. This might seem like a roundabout way of answering your question, but I had a client who came to me for songwriting years ago. And then after I started this, grow your whole voice, she admitted to me that she had a novel that had been in the works for 40 years. And I think she admitted that to me, much in the same way that I admitted that I had written songs to my creative champion. I think that she admitted that to me because she was aware that I was doing this, like, yes, let's help to expand those energies. And what we ended up doing was finding whether that was truth for her, whether that 40-year novel was something that really needed to be brought to fruition. And it was, and it is one that's being brought to publishment this year. So that's one thing. However, also with the process that we did and with a few other clients, it's turned out maybe it's not that, maybe it's something else, right?
Right.
So the basics map, I guess, of it is we start small, we start within, we start facing our fears and our vulnerabilities around this stuff, and then we move way more easily, move into the what.
Right.
We go
Right.
into the why really first for ourselves, and
Yeah.
then it gets into the what, and then it gets into the how.
And this is where I think, as especially if you're a person divorcing with children, we have to be really super careful to protect our kids during this process. And one of the things that I think that we could do to help them after talking with you is, as a single mom or as a single dad, we need to creatively engage with our kids, like play with it, like not just sit there when they're playing and be on your phone or doing whatever and they're in the same room, but get down on the floor, play with the Legos, or if they're teenagers, like if they're into art or whatever, drawing or whatever they're into, participate with them and be vulnerable and share your experience.
Yeah.
How do you feel kids and adults interact with that plaything? What's your thoughts on that?
It's mostly by example, just like everything else. I was just doing a homeschooler podcast. I was a guest on a podcast of homeschooling parents, and yeah, the more than ever when we're in the middle of a divorce or a rough transition, the kids need to see our example of choosing joy. They need to see our example of making the making the moments work, even if they don't totally work. They need to see us uh choosing it. I'm not
Yeah,
even going to say trying it, but they need to see us choosing to do that.
right.
Um, And yeah, and that by example, especially and when they're younger, we can lead them into certain things. You know, we can lead them into activities sometimes, depending on who they are, what their personalities are. And we can let them lead us as well. It needs to be reciprocal and go both ways on that. And by the time they get to be teenagers, most of them, many of them might not want us to be leading them in any way whatsoever.
Right,
So we are
right.
actually by that time only leading by example
Sure.
most of the time.
But I think we can still be supportive, right? So,
Oh,
let's say your teen is really interested in, I'm trying to think of I haven't been around teens for a long, long time in my house, but, let's say they're really interested in a particular, like comic books, I know are really big for kids, like adult comic books, like the anime and all that, different, like talk to them about it and get interested and get curious about it. And yes, your teens don't want you to be the parent that shows up at the art show at school and kisses them on the forehead and tells them how good they are, but you can still show interest and you can still, do your own little drawings and, share with kids, because I
mhm.
think they do appreciate that. Even if they don't think it's cool, they still appreciate it.
Right, right. And they look back and appreciate it too.
And I think we
I'm sure
can
my
also,
kids are in their 20s and they're
well,
in that phase where they're like, Mom, I'm so glad you did that, even though I didn't know I was glad at the time.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I think even adult children appreciate when they see their parents, like, or grandparents, even still, engaging in play and finding those sparks of joy throughout the day and being creative.
Yeah. Well, like I
What,
mentioned about my mother, it was when I was a teenager and I was going through, I was in like a hospital program for depression. I was in some really intense moments. And that sort of precipitated her to go ahead and play, to go ahead and find herself somehow. And at first, like it didn't necessarily, it helped me, of course, because she became a much more resilient and stronger person very quickly so that she could be there for me. As far as my ability to take on those energies and choose them and choose that kind of joy myself, that was until another decade or two later that I was able to do that. But it was there a decade or two later. It was an example and an energy for me to build upon
yeah.
because she had started doing that. And of course, she continued it throughout her whole rest of her life, which, was an inspiration to me and many, many others.
Well, and this is so resonating with me that I think that if you can, for yourself or for your kids, whether you have kids or not, it doesn't matter. If you can find joy, choose joy at even at difficult times during the divorce or throughout the divorce, throughout your life in difficult times, then when there aren't those challenges, joy is going to be that much easier. Joy and play and creativity is going to be that much easier.
Yeah, we raise our baseline, right? We raise that and we've just become that much more resilient. And I will say, my mom and dad got divorced after 40 years of marriage. And so I think my mom was in her 60s at that point. And because she had built into joy and creativity and had found herself like who she really was. I mean, it was not an easy thing for her marriage to end after 40 years. It wasn't easy for my dad either. But
Right.
for my mom, it really was like a natural flow. It was not a trauma in any way. It was not a crisis in any way because of the work she had done on joy. So yeah, now is always the time to start to be stoking those play and creativity energies.
Yeah, and I love that idea of, I'm going to go back to this because it really does, just 30 seconds 3 times a day or whatever. If you can do a minute, do a minute. If you can do 5 minutes,
Yeah.
do 5 minutes. But you know, like you said, it can be something simple like taking a bath and having a little rubber ducky in your bathtub with you. It doesn't have to be anything huge, just something that brings that sense of joy to your life.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I have lists now from myself and from clients and everything of all these different kinds of micro moments that are like, and there's just it's infinite possibility within that.
Right.
Listening to the wind and the leaves in the trees, just feeling our feet on the ground for a moment. playing a little like, mini game where you tell a story to your pen for like just, for a minute. So, or your pen tells you a story.
Yeah.
Like, what did you do today? You know?
And that's the thing, whatever it is that brings a smile. And I always tell them, this is so funny because I just had a client who was preparing for mediation and she was really worried about going into the mediation room. And I said, listen, load up 3 videos of your kids playing or their baseball game or crazy cat videos. I don't care what it is. And then before you go in there, play those, go into the bathroom, play these for yourself and bring a smile to your face and then walk into that room because it just your stress just dramatically drops, if not completely goes away. Now it's, not to say you can't be triggered again, but when you have that, it's so powerful.
Yeah, and I also love the layer of that it's about their kids when they're watching, like that's what they're, if you suggested they watch their kids and then they can help keep their kids at the center, which will help keep you out of
Yes.
the drama,
Yeah.
basically. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, Jenny, this has been really fantastic. And the reason that I think that this is so important is I don't think you're going to hear this from, and this is nothing against these professionals, but I guarantee your attorney is not going to say, are you finding 30 seconds of joy every day? And probably your financial planner isn't, and most likely your ex-spouse isn't, and probably your family members aren't either. So I really thought the message that Jenny offers is important to share. And the nice thing is you can do it anywhere at any time, and it doesn't have to cost you a penny, which I think is another nice thing. So, but Jenny, you also have, or not but, and you also have a gift for people that are listening to this YouTube if they want to take advantage of it. Can you just tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, I mean it also won't cost you a penny, although I have sold the thing and a bonus for a total of $30, but it's a meditation series that there's also a bonus and I'm trying to remember what it is, but I can't. So I won't go into that part. You'll see it when you go there. It's a meditation series where I take you through visualizations around your creative spark, your creative abundance, and your creative passion. These are 3 areas of creativity that are, good to kind of focus in on and get some vibrations going with. So it's that, and there's 6 tracks. Several with spoken word and several with the sound vibrations only. And that, yeah, they help to open up your creative energies. They help you to envision what is possible for your creative life and to get really connected with your creative center and
Yeah.
what your creative purpose is.
Wonderful. Well, Jenny, thank you so much for sharing this. And I think that this is something that we need to really focus on during the divorce. And it's one thing I do work on with my clients, but you're the expert on this. So I wanted you to share your wisdom, and I really do appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Marty.
Thank you, Jenny. And everybody listening in, thank you so much for watching this episode of Spotlight on the Divorce Expert. And feel free to sort through the others, take a look at them. Don't forget to like and subscribe.